Warm welcome to all the participants and to all the panelists who have joined us over here. I'm Anjali Sriram and I have with me Aishwarya Srinivasan. We both are second year students at Popular School of Public Policy and we are going to be graduating in 2 days actually. We both are members of the Gender and Policy Club and we thought that as a parting gift, we should um make a webinar on the legalization of same-sex marriages. And the topic is the legalization of same-sex marriages, a realistic or a utopian idea. So equality before law and non-discrimination based on religion, race, caste, sex, or place of birth find themselves enshrined in the Indian Constitution as Articles 14 and 15 respectively. These are also the overarching principles that the concept of human rights is based on. However, it becomes imperative that a country's policy and decisions be reviewed in the reflection of these very articles and principles to check if there is a cause for these policies and laws to be transformed. Articles 14 and 15, when reviewed in the perspective of the gender-based policies in India, have witnessed a journey of their own in ensuring that these basic principles are delivered upon. While acknowledgement must be made on the progress made in this regard, however, only the surface has been scratched. The LGBTQIA community in India, which includes the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and other identities, has largely been shunned by the society, and the state has ignored them in its policies and legislation. There's a deep historical reason behind this, starting with the British imposition of Section 377 in the Indian Penal Code, which criminalized homosexuality and termed it unnatural. As a result, the community was deeply ostracized and they had to struggle hard during the post independence period. In 2018, this unconstitutional law was done away with and homosexuality was decriminalized. However, in practice, it hasn't changed and the community still lacks a lot of the same rights. And in this context, we wanted to discuss the legalization of same-sex marriages. We are lucky to have an extremely talented and diverse panel with us that can share their unique perspectives and, more importantly, educate us on the topic. So I would request with this to all the panelists to start introducing themselves and their work. I would like Sonal ma'am to start with it.
Thank you so much, Aishwarya and Anjali, for having me here. I'm Sonal Gyani. I work with the International Planned Parenthood Federation. I've been working in the space of LGBT rights for almost 15 years. And primarily, I've been in the space of creating peer support groups and also capacitating and training different community members on these issues. Also, a lot of work around advocacy and sensitizing society and different stakeholders on these particular issues.
Thank you, ma'am. Mala aunty?
I am retired MNC employee and I'm also social worker for the last 2 decades. For the last 1 decade, I'm concentrating on LGBTQ because my son came out from the college. He came out in the year for 2005, but he came out to the society in the year 2011. Since then, we both together started working for this community. And last 4 years after this act has come, I'm working with both the central government and the state government for their livelihood projects and housing policies, everything. Yeah. My child is a trans child.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Sandeepan?
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having. My name is Sandeepan. I go with the names Sandy, and my pronouns are he and him. I'm working, I lead an organization called Mopera Foundation, which is working for the community, LGBT community altogether in Telangana and Hyderabad specifically. It's been 8 years I'm working. My area of most work on employability of the community, mental health, as well as scaling and upgrading the community skills members and all. So it's been a long time working with the community altogether, and I'm glad to be part of this session. Thank you so much.
Very good evening to all of you. My background is a little kind of different in a sense. I've been a military officer for about 20 years. I quit the army too premature and thereafter I continued my studies during the army time also. And thereafter, I started with law, then I came to Kautilya as a public policy. And now I'm a director for public policy here at Alliance. and I work on law and human rights and public policy issues.
Thank you so much, sir. And once again, thank you to all the panelists for joining us for the session. So, firstly, I would like Sonal ma'am to quickly give an overview about the developments on this case so far. So, the relevance of the issue, the ask of the petitioner, the arguments made by the Solicitor General in the Supreme Court, and the replies by the Supreme Court as well. And this is just so that the attendees get a fair idea about the topic and the reason why we are talking about this right now.
Thank you, Anjali. Thank you, Aishwarya. I'm going to try and explain this like I'm explaining it to a layman. In fact, like, for a lot of people, they are like, what is the big deal? Just give the marriage rights, right? But it is not that simple. So now there are a couple of things that you need to understand before I kind of get into the arguments around marriage equality. First of all, there's a difference between getting married and getting your marriage registered. Okay. So when it comes to, say, marriage, right? What happens is mostly a marriage ceremony is enacted through religious ceremonies, right? And many years ago, there were people who would want to have interreligious marriages as well, right? Or intercaste marriages. And there were challenges. So for a long time, actually, a marriage before, marriage codes came up, they were not really required to be legally registered. But post-colonization, and you will see around the 1950s, in fact, certain acts have come into India, which are specific to each of the religions. So how do you recognize? Because, things like once a marriage happens, you want to register the marriage so that you can pass on property, you can pass on, other things related to your family, whether it is inheritance or, things like that. So because of that, different acts were made. Now, in case of India, we didn't have a singular act for marriage, right? It was actually different religious acts for different religious persons. So, for example, the Hindu Marriage Act 1955, this was the act was used for Hindus, Buddhists, Jains, and Sikhs. Then there was the Muslim Personal Law, which is 1937. This is to register Muslim marriages. The Christian Marriage Act in 1872 and the Parsi Marriage and Divorce Act in 1936, which governs the laws of the Parsi Zoroastrians. Now, for people who would want to, would want to have an interreligious, or in fact not even want to get a religious this thing, but be recognized as married couples, the option of the Special Marriage Act was also created in 1954. So this is a particular secular act that allows any two individuals to marry regardless of their religion. And usually what happens is that you need like a notice of 30 days for the marriage to be registered. If there are no objection, then the marriage can proceed. Now, depending on this marriage registration certificates, there are other things that you will sort of get. Now, when we are looking at these laws, the way they are, actually, they are not recognizing the marriage, especially the religious ones. They are not interpreting, even if it says two individuals, they are not interpreting it as marriage between any two individuals. As per them, it is a marriage between a man and a woman, a biological man and a biological woman. And as far as Special Marriage Act is concerned, Special Marriage Act, although it says two individuals, it is still being interpreted as two individuals. Now, how do you register a marriage? Like supposing, so it's not like your marriage is invalid if you sort of didn't get registered, right? You can get married and you can then go to your local magistrate and have it registered, your marriage. Now, in the case of same-sex couples, they did get married. It's not like marriage is not happening. But when it comes to marriage, that is registration, that's where the problem began. So many couples would go to the registrar, okay, and the registrar would be like, we don't interpret this as marriage between, it has to be only biological man and woman. Now, that is where the problem sort of began, okay, because it doesn't explicitly say, but it's being interpreted, especially in the Special Marriage Act, as between heterosexual couples. So from here, first of all, previously the community was criminalized. Okay, so there was no question of marriage and other things because two criminals will not have other rights. So after decriminalization is when the first, when people started registering and things and was not being recognized, there was a push from the community to sort of get together and push for this. So we did approach parliamentarians, and in fact, there was Supriya Sule, okay, who actually, in fact, even she put in like a bill, a private bill in the parliament. So parliament is another way that you kind of pass laws and things like that. But the bill was not even allowed to be introduced. Forget about a discussion on that. Now, post this, okay, the understanding is that if we are, you recognize in the Supreme Court decriminalization, they said, oh, we recognize you as, citizens, we recognize your right to privacy, we recognize your right to dignity. But the minute we would go to court, they're like, oh, no, we don't recognize all of that. Okay. So the thing is that is how the community then has reached the Supreme Court. What has happened is, as of now, different kinds of people approach the court. First of all, the first bunch of couples were like, please, work on this Special Marriage Act. Okay, because we would like it to be interpreted beyond, heterosexuals. The other marriage act that was touched on was Hindu Marriage Act. So far, people have not touched the other ones, the Muslim, Christian, and Parsi. But there have also been people who said, I have a spouse. I got married, like say in the US. There, my partner is recognized, but here in India, my partner is not recognized. So how are you registering, foreign marriages also? This also came up. Then there are some people who manage to, in the country, India, single women can adopt children. So some lesbian women have had children, okay, adopted as a single mother, and they are married. It may not be registered, but they are married. But their partner is not being recognized as their parents, or the parent of the child legally. So this is a bunch of people who've now gone into court, okay, including other activists saying that we would like this, to be heard. So a total of about 18 petitions, I think, have been accepted by the court. And these are different kinds of people, community people, organizations, different kinds of bodies who've come together. And I'm trying to make this really simple for you. So they've all come together and they are like, can you interpret this differently? Now, in each of these cases, right, like the opinion of the government is obviously sought. And usually the executive body, the center of the, government is asked for an opinion. Okay, so now in our case, the government's opposition to same-sex in marriage has been so far primarily represented by the Solicitor General, whose name is Tushar Mehta. And Tushar Mehta has come to the court, and the hearing started. Okay, for about 10 days, hearings have begun. Lot of hearings from both sides have been heard, okay, for almost 10 days. And primarily the opposition, which is this SG, Tushar Mehta, you'll keep seeing him everywhere. He has been saying primarily three things. That this should be a primarily prerogative, right? That they are saying that you cannot make another law for marriage. And what the other side is saying, that we don't want this particular law, we just want you to interpret that SMA. But they are like, no, you want to touch these other laws, it should go to parliament. The law is supposed to, you guys are legal, you should interpret the legal understanding of it. You can't make a law. That is parliament's job. Other thing is that they are saying things like, oh, you may say that, this is global and all of that. It is not. In India, we recognize this union to be a traditional union. You are going to destroy society. It has to be only man and woman. And, if you touch this one particular law, there are many other laws which will get affected, adoption, this, that. So the thing is, don't do this in a hurry, because if you do this in a hurry, okay, and you give marriage rights, you may actually cause damage, because there have been some judgments in the past where you did it. But what does it imply if people do not socially accept it? As far as the petitioners are concerned, they are like, no, I'm telling you very basically that they are like, we have the right to equality. Okay, we want the same rights as our heterosexual counterparts. We are not getting recognized as couples. We want in society the same dignity, the same recognition. We would like to have property rights. We want to have adoption rights and everything, insurance, health, all of these things we are not getting because you're not doing. Now, finally, one of the things that happened last week was that while Tushar Mehta continued, he was asked, okay, by the Chief Justice of India, because this case is so big that they have sent it to the five-judge bench. Chief Justice of India is included in that. In fact, these are all public hearings. It's all available on the internet to see, because the case is so important. And they asked the government that, if you are saying you cannot give marriage, how will you assure that these folks, the other rights that they're asking for, they're giving that? So they came back saying that we will constitute one parliamentary committee, right? We will not a parliamentary committee, we will have a cabinet cabinet expert will come in and he'll come back and we will see how this can happen. Now, if you look at history in other countries, what has happened is usually they don't give you marriage directly. They have gone with civil union first. Now, what is the civil union? Civil union is that we are giving you all the rights for marriage, but we won't call it a marriage. Okay. Now to this. So there is some speculation that maybe we might get civil union, not marriage. Okay. And now, finally, what has happened is that in the closing, the community is like, we are not interested in civil union. They're happy with the civil union, but give us marriage rights because you are still not calling it a marriage. And then we become second-class citizens because you're not recognizing it's not the same, right? And now, finally, what has happened is yesterday, the court has closed. And now the Supreme Court judges have said, now we reserve for judgment. What does reserve? Now we reserve the case. What does that mean? Now that means that usually what they do is they immediately give you the result, right? But now they are saying no. Now we will go through the entire argument because they also have to write their judgment out. And then they will give the verdict after going through. But now no more hearings on this particular from both sides will be allowed unless it's like really like something special or extraordinary or need of the hour type of thing. They don't need that. Now next thing that will come is the verdict. Now usually what happens is that the Supreme Court itself has told high courts also that the verdicts should not be reserved more than 6 months. Usually within 1 to 2 months it sort of happens. There may be a break now happening for the judges, so you may either get it before that or after that. So that is where we are with this whole court case.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that quick overview. And quickly, I want to understand from you itself that what led to the Supreme Court to prioritize this matter right now? Like suddenly, media is also talking about it. We can see it all over the place. So what happened? What led to it being prioritized right now?
No, it's hardly sudden. It's been like from 2018. They should have given it to us immediately.
Yeah.
These court hearings have started long back. Last 2-3 years, say they have started. They are actually pretty late. What has happened is that media coverage and of these hearings is what you are seeing, right? The last 10 days, the continuous hearings is you are seeing. And so it may give you a feeling that, oh, this is happening too quickly. But that is not the case. In fact, the government has really sat on giving its opinion, the center. In fact, they were given 2-3 notices over at the beginning of the year. And now finally they have given. And after that, they are asking for more time, from their state. But it's definitely not been priority. When it comes to, I think Supriya Sule, hers also, like the intervention she tried to make in the parliament was 2-3 years back. And so we also say, right, like a lot of times people tell us like, take it slow, society is not ready. And then to that, it's like, till when? Like, how long are we supposed to wait? Like, till I'm dead? Like, is there a deadline, like, to this? Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Aishwarya?
Yeah. So thank you so much, Sonal ma'am. Moving on in the same spirit to Mala Aunty, Mrs. Mukunda Mala, who is the president of Queer Bandhu Parents Association in Hyderabad, but we fondly call her Mala Aunty. So Mala Aunty, our question to you is, there have been a lot of comments of late, which say like, one being single parents are better than LGBTQ couples in raising children, which was made by the Solicitor General during the Supreme Court hearing, and that same-sex parents endanger their children's well-being. Now, this was said by the National Child Rights Commission of India. So, number one, in your opinion, how valid are these comments? And number two, in your experience of having worked with the community, the LGBTQIA plus community, what are your thoughts when it comes to them being parents or their way of parenting? So I'd love to hear it from you. Aunty, you're on mute.
I'm feeling like laughing at this point, Solicitor General is raising this point. Single parent can raise, better than non-heterosexual parents. So there is no evidence at all. There's no research. How can they question this? See, one side, we, parents groups, CPOs, NGOs, we are all struggling to bring awareness, to bring positivity in the society. At this time, this is not fair by Solicitor General to raise this question, right? So coming to, see, many heterosexual people, they're getting married very happily. Do you think all of them are raising their children with good discipline, good education, everything? Nowadays, we are seeing everywhere children are going on their own. They're getting married, love marriage, settled marriage, whatever it is. Again, they're coming out with diverse. Is it so? Is it right to raise this question? Even heterosexual people also not able to raise their children, however society want, right? In the same way, see, single parent is very, very tough, I'm telling you. Coming to a non-heterosexual couple, to my knowledge, to my experience, I'm interacting with these children for the last 1 decade. See, what is priority to raise a child? Love and affection. Where there is love and affection, children will be with you, will listen to you. However we want, we can raise them as a good citizens to the society. First point, better parenting. I will say these children are lost love and affection from the parents, siblings, society, workplace, everywhere. They knows the value of love and affection very much. I'm sure they'll keep this in mind. Somewhere it will be in their mind. Keeping this in mind, I'm sure these children will be able to raise their children with love and affection and make them useful citizens for this country. Coming to sexual abuse, this will happen everywhere, heterosexual or homosexual, everywhere it is happening. I'm not denying that. But coming to heterosexual couple, they don't talk about the sexual abuse to their children. Everything will be confidential. But whereas coming to this non-heterosexual parents, already they faced, they experience, whether they face their experience or not, because we are all talking among our NGOs or CBOs or parents, we're all openly we are discussing. That's why these children knows about that what is sexual abuse. They're well much aware of this sexual abuse. These people, these non-heterosexual couple, they'll keep this also in mind while raising their children. They'll try to avoid these situations, these children, and so that we can bring that rate of sexual abuse for children to down. So coming to a gender neutral, coming to a heterosexual couple, always they're talking about what girl should be like this, boy should be like this, right? It is happening. My generation, yes, but this generation no need. This generation, their mentality is completely different. Coming to this heterosexual parents, day and out, they are talking about all these things. They knows. So they can raise the children with gender neutral. So we will leave it to children, what they want to wear, what they want to do, what they want to play. So heterosexual couple, they're well aware of these things. In the same lines, they can raise their children. Then finance. They're talking about single parent bring in a raise. Yes, I'll agree with that. But coming to heterosexual couple, non-heterosexual couple, if both of them will work together, they can raise children with a lot of comforts, right? Giving them good education, giving them nutrition food, giving them good health, everything. It's not like, government is leaving all orphans. There are many orphans. I don't say government is ignoring, but government, to what extent they can give comforts to these children, right? There is limitation. So if they allow this heterosexual couple to adopt these children, they can raise non-heterosexual children, they can raise these children with lot of comfort, right? Coming to single, those days, we used to have joint families. So children were, growing with good, happy atmosphere. If mother is not there, if father is not there, somebody else was there. If you talk about only single parent, this is not easy. See, for example, take my own. Being me and my husband, we struggled a lot to raise my child, right? So if you talk about single parent can raise the children better than heterosexual, I don't think so. If couple are there, so nowadays so many accidents are taking place. If one parent lost, the child lose, what will happen? So Couple should be there, whether heterosexual or non-heterosexual. I don't agree with parent, single parent can raise a child. That is not that safe. So coming to our if I say I told you this is not right question. If this is right question, I said not right question. If you say this is right question, why should we have that marriage act? Any independent can come and raise child, right? Whether heterosexual person, independent single parent, or heterosexual, non-heterosexual single parent, anybody can raise child. Then why should we have that marriage act? That is my question. Coming to NCPC, what happened to all these years for NCPC? They couldn't see children struggling in schools everywhere, sexual abuse, everything was happening. Millions of cases we can see today. Why? All these days they kept quiet. Today they are talking about child protection. How? I'm not talking about only heterosexual, non-heterosexual children. See, lot of children they abused, even schools, everywhere. Why this NCPC didn't come into picture? Had they come long back, they should have, stopped dropouts from the schools. How many children are dropping out from schools? What are they doing now? Is it not government responsibility to protect that? Today I'm asking NCPC, what did you do all these days? When it is coming to Marriage Act, you're telling, same-sex parents endanger their children's well-being. It's not at all right. Lot of brain drain is there because of lack of these rights. How many children are living out of our country? Tell me. My own child, she love India. I only throw her out of our country because 2005 nobody was talking about this. She couldn't complete her MBBS also in that college. Today she will say those days are black days. That child, how much she got abused from peers. So these are the things we'll have to keep. We can stop brain drain also. If these people will come forward, if these non-heterosexual children also get all rights, they can live in our country. We can use their brains also, intellectual brains. This is my points.
Thank you so much, Mala Aunty. Taking from what Mala Aunty has been sharing with us, Sandy, moving on to you. The government, again, in their argument called same-sex marriage and urban elitist concept. Now, this is a lot to take from what Mala Aunty has also been sharing from her experience and to take in from your experience as well. While the CJI did rebut this statement, what we would like to know is from your experience of running Mobera Foundation and interacting with the members of the community, do you think this categorization stands or does it not? So we'd love to hear what you think about it.
Definitely not. So, I mean, I call it as educated illiterates who say that urban elitics concept actually survives because if I take my example first, if I can talk about myself, because I myself belong from a very rural area, and the only difference and the reason why this concept might have arrived, because a lot of people in urban, when we compare rural area to urban area, so in rural area, what the problem happens is a lot of people are there from the community. There are so many people who are struggling to even understand their sexual identity. There are a lot of people, like example me, since I am from a rural area, and a lot of people, I was never aware that what I am, why I have a different choice. Like when I was growing up, when I was in my college, I see my friends roaming around with and talking about girls all around, and I always used to think there is something like, no, I'm not liking it. There's something different. And since being from a rural area, and there people were not from the community, and there might be people from the community, absolutely there are, but they are not open, they are not out. There was no talk around. So for a term to understand LGBT community was also a big thing for me. So I used to think that I'm the only person born this way in this earth, and I'm little different. I'm not understanding anything. This concept of me understanding the community, or at least accepting myself, what took me so long. Like I knew that I was different from when I was in my class 7 or 8, But then it happened that I understood about my sexual identity and that I belong from an LGBT community. It took again 10 years because I came in Hyderabad. I tried to mingle with the community people. I understand about my gender and sexuality, and then the entire journey began. So, and just like me, there were a lot of people who are struggling in their areas. It's just that the awareness, and because of the society pressure, they are scared. Their family, if they come to know, they will, beat them, or there will be no one to help them in the rural area. And that is the only reason people are not outspoken in the rural area. But when we compare in the urban area, when we compare the entire scenario with the urban area, we see that in the capital cities like Hyderabad, we see little more freedom over here, little more acceptance, and nobody is bothering about how are you dressing, whom are you meeting. So there the acceptance level, and when compared to the rural area, the people here can express their feeling a lot way, and there are a lot of events around, there are a lot of community around, so it is easy for them to come out. And also knowing the fact that if at all in the urban areas also, if somebody is coming out, that doesn't mean that they are from the elite group. To be honest, 90% of the LGBT community people are either below poverty line or a middle class family, which gives I mean, those people are yet struggling with their job, their education completion, or they are struggling to buy a house in the city. So those are the people, they are comprising of 90% of the LGBTIQ community people altogether. So the concept, why this concept have come, and it's a very wrong concept, because a lot of acceptance there is there in the urban areas, not in the rural areas. And that's the reason people see a lot of people in the cities, or in the metropolitan cities, being discussing or having pride parade. But I'm glad with due course of activism, with due course of a lot of people from the community, the concept have started changing. There are a lot of prides. Previously, if we compare, there was only one pride happening in one particular state, and every state didn't even have their own pride. But now if you see in one particular state, there are 3 to 4 places, like if they are going to the small cities also to do conduct pride, so that people are aware that there are community people over there, because most of the people who are in rural areas choose to come out of their home in the name of job or study in the in the rural urban areas, to think that their life will be better over there. They will have a freedom. They can live their life the way more. And also, when we as Sonal was rightly mentioning about the rights where we were discussing on, so these rights are these are the general basic life. These are our day-to-day life, like house rent, adoption, or nominees in that matter, insurance in that matter. So these are the general basics rights. To be honest, these are the rights which will not elite group will be anytime required, because they do have n number of money with them. They do have n number of support system and family support with them. So if at all we are talking about our right, and what we want this marriage equality to come down, this marriage rights to come down, these are definitely not asked by any group or any elite particular group. These are the middle class family, the below poverty line family, who wants, because they want to nominate their partner. And so those so many examples we receive. Also, taking another example into picture, when a lesbian person, there were one lesbian couple who were in rural area. When they came out to their family saying that, we do not want to marry because we love each other. To be honest, there was a huge issue, because they ran away from that village. But the point was, the families are there. So if at all, if they are, so these are the reasons why people doesn't want to step out and doesn't want to even understand or even declare that they are from the community or want to work for that. So they hide themselves. They came to Hyderabad, they ran away from there and they came to Hyderabad, they were living over here. But the problem was, their families were settled down there. So once any queer person will definitely have a same love towards their family as any of the heterosexual person in this world. So for them to even think that their parents are in danger, because one person among them whose family had a political background, so they reaching out to and harassing them entire village, and and their village panchayat had a discussion that we have to throw the entire family out because her daughter has done these such kind of issues. So these are the n number of cases which we register in our day-to-day life. Also, having a different plan to have a different conversation altogether. There were times when in urban areas also people are facing discriminations. Like example, conversion therapy is nowhere illegal in our country, but there's still conversion therapy actively practiced in a city like Hyderabad, then we can imagine the level of discrimination the entire community people might have received in the rural areas. If they are coming out, if they are, the parents will first have to, take some Baba or some Molvi, they'll take them and then have some Jadoo Tona or some everything done. After that, if their parents are a little bit sensible or a little bit educated, they may take you to some psychiatrist. Now, the same issue, the conversion therapy or the psychiatrist giving you hormonal tablets is well practiced in the rural areas itself, then we can understand the problem and issues that a person might be going in the urban areas. It has been practiced till now. So the same issues and problem at the hyper level, it will be practiced in the rural areas. And that point of time, at some level, either this person suicides or get into depression or end their life getting into a heterosexual marriage. And that's the reason their visibilities are very rare. So the entire point is a baseless point where they say that it's only a urban and or in for elitist groups or conducting such kind of issues. It's there everywhere. Homosexualism was there in our past, was there before the Britishers came, is there now also, and will remain altogether. So it's a baseless conversation altogether. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandeepan. Anjali, over to you.
Coming to Mukul sir now. So my question is so that the Bar Council of India, they put out the following data point, that is 99.9% of Indians oppose the concept of LGBTQIA marriage rights. And this was conducted through a survey according to them, but of course no details are published. So I want to ask you, sir, that what are your thoughts on this? Secondly, how does the court look at such baseless, unrealistic data point put out by the Bar Council of India?
Thanks, Anjali, and very warm hello to everybody. I will start from one data point which Sonal mentioned, how long would you wait if you want to wait and the society has to get prepared? And, by this kind of 99.9%, you give a point that when is it acceptable? Maybe mathematically, you say when more than 50% of people accept this kind of arrangement or this kind of union, you say you will accept it. The larger question is, should the state actually look, or the lawmaking process or the judiciary will take this into consideration? And I say, if this was the case of taking consideration as this kind of conceptual utilitarian morality, where you look from a sociological perspective, then we would have never had the victory of 2018 also, right? Because that is the time also the contestation was the same thing, that people were not prepared, And then the whole, what you said here is one concept of a sociological perspective, right? Can the court kind of overlook it? Well, that discretion, but it will always be in the back of the mind of the court to say, well, this is a sociological perspective. How it works, right? It is something, my behavior in the society is actually what I am, if A and B are there. So my behavior is something like what I think others would think of me is right. I behave in a manner that I think what I'm doing is right and people accept it as right? And the second thing is, people want me to behave in their own structure of their own norms and customs, right? And that is where the whole what my behavior should be and what my behavior ought to be kind of puts. Why I'm positioning this context is, this 99% is something which is telling us how we ought to behave. And the society is not really prepared for it, right? And why do we argue it that way? Because if you see it from the legal term, okay, marriage is understood as a contract per se. But when you look at a sociological dimension of marriage, then you call it as an institution, right? And the moment you call it an institution, you say there are rights and responsibilities towards the society because many other people get connected to it. And the moment you say many other people are connected to it, you get entrenched into what you should behave and how you ought to behave as the society wants you to behave, right? So that is where, and then what is the major issue that comes up is, where does my own choice come? Where is what Sandeep mentioned, my own dignity? And how Malama mentioned that how long would we wait, say, to send a daughter away? So, there is this kind of friction that is going to be there. Now, coming back to the question whether the court must examine, I think personally, I think this could be just one datum, but that should not be not even persuasive for them to give a judgment, is how you hold that issue, right? When the Bar Council gives it is an innate feeling of concept of their own conditional idea of social morality, virtue, and they say this is the way the society must function, right? So there is a kind of change to contestation viewpoint that is here. That's kind of a little philosophically way, but I'm trying to just try to explain to you how the change to contestation is taken. So the second point is, how should you look at the same concept from a question what Sandeepan was mentioning about dignity, the choice, my own honor, and then entering into the domain like a common person who is entitled to all rights and privileges. And I feel that is the real contestation where this 99% kind of report comes up and why I'm kind of contesting it. But the question is, should everything be governed by a 99% majority rule that what society wants? Or there should be a change? And I'll give you an example why I'm kind of really pushing it out. The whole story of same-sex marriage started in the earlier part recorded was 1971, when the Baker versus Nelson court comes up and in Washington and says, well, you're not entitled to a same-sex marriage. And then 22 years later, 1993, when the Hawaii court comes and says, no, same-sex marriage is there, and the absence of which is violative of the equal amendment laws, right? That is the first time you begin to see, well, I am also a person in this environment, and I have my own entitlements, And 93 days happens, and 96, a presidential order, President Bush comes up and says, well, Clinton comes up and says, no, we will redefine marriage in the Constitution itself, and we'll say there is a definition of marriage, a union between one man and one woman. Why I'm trying to highlight this issue is, what is happening in this case is that it will also come up to the next point which I'd like to highlight is, should it be a legislative kind of paradigm to kind of discretion to make it, or it should be a kind of a judicial kind of intervention should also be there? That is what you're saying, Lee. So how President Bush comes and says, no, we'll make it. And they make it unconstitutional. It's only in 1996 and thereafter when the Court of Vermont comes up and says, well, they may not have it, and you will get into the frame of saying that you will have the common benefits clause from the Supreme Court, and you are entitled to the common benefit clause, which is security, personal, national benefits, and others, right? And that's where the concept of the civil union comes into play. Basically, we stop short of marriage, but there's a civil union. We'll accept civil union, and then House will explain what civil union was. That's how it started going. So then it's 2004 when the case comes up and says legalize marriage. It's President Bush suddenly goes out and he says, we will have a national constitutional amendment again, and we will not accept this. It's only it gets failed. But between that, there is a society that starts moving into it. And the society says, okay, we don't want to look at what constitution, what things are. They start issuing licenses. There's a New York, New Jersey starts issuing the licenses. And then California court and others come and say, no, you can't issue, and they're all illegal. So what I'm trying to say is this is the way the contestation began. It's this whole period of contestation that began when you started looking from a very sociological perspective and the 99% clause, right? When you're ready or not, and then you suddenly come back to say how the contest has begun. This whole 40 years contest that began over and over again. It showed that position and gets me back to the question what Tushar Mehta was mentioning, right? It is the intent of the legislation. How can political contestation decide it? Because the political contestation is very clear. It is based by a very majority or utilitarian narrative. Society is not prepared and we'll move it. And that's what I feel that this, whatever the judgment comes out, the judgment would kind of encompass this very intent of what is not just about law, but also the preambular objective, okay? That's where the constitutional morality will come into play. When you speak about justice, you speak about dignity, and that contestation will begin. But to get back to your position, is the society really prepared? And my question is, should you wait for the society to be prepared and keep mathematically modeling it up and say, well, now we are prepared? Or you should look, and that's why I say there are certain issues that are independent of this majority 99%. I mean, that's why I'll position it. And that's how you look at it. Now, somebody may come and say, well, marriage, why really this contest comes up? I may believe myself, I be married and I have a union, I'll stay together. So what happens is, it is an individual choice concept, with the question of privacy comes in. The problem comes up is that when you want to enjoy this union in the collective frame, in the community itself, and you want the community to recognize your choice. And I think that is where the whole contest takes place, where the society is willing to accept and not. And that's where the position of marriage as an individual choice, but enjoyed in the collective dimension of the society itself. And that's why society is given. And what Sandeepan was mentioning was right. It's like a more of a taboo, and we are not willing to listen to anything because we are so entrenched in this that we say this is the best thing. And then, whole idea of virtue and sin starts taking place in that cycle. So, when I would look at, or maybe how I would like to predict what will happen. But I think something correct me if you have a different point. But I think something like a declaration to a civil union concept short of marriage is what we could think of. And that's how we would. But this contest will always be there. But I say that until the judiciary actually comes out to look at a very entitled approach, at the moment, it's not an entitled approach. It's a very kind of caregiving approach. Okay, you want to do it, your society will say yes, no. And I'm not going into the further complex issue of adoption, marriage, what the NCPCR said, although the Delhi Commission of Child Rights has a little deviant view on that. Okay, that moves away from there. But I think this is where I would like to position it. I mean, that's what I would like to say that. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. So, sir, taking from what you were saying, while Mr. Mehta had a point of view in terms of whether society is ready or not, the petitioners had a very interesting take on this, where they say that sometimes we need law to be able to change how society thinks, because society then follows what law states, and then we see another change coming in terms of acceptance. So in the same light, what, in your opinion, do you think are going to be the social, cultural, or legal implications of what of the recent direction that the Supreme Court actually gave, which was reported on in the Hindu, I think around 4th of May, where they say in quotes that they'd be easing the living conditions of gay couples. So what do you think about that? What are your thoughts around that?
The change will take place. I mean, I'll quote from Tushar Mehta's point that you have opened the window when you decriminalized 377. And now that gave a gateway to kind of embolden this approach to go for same-sex marriage. And when he also cautions, rather, he really cautions the court and say, when you open this gateway, you will open the another gateway to many other things. But the question is this not natural in the process of an evolving society? I mean, that's what I kind of think. And why I'm saying it, remember what definition was. I mean, imagine about 70, 80, even post-independence, when a woman unfortunately became a widow, and what her life was. Hair is shaven off, you wear only white, you're not entitled to even go to ceremonies, and things changed. Then you began to accept living relationships. You said there are rights and entitlements even in a living relationship. You said there's a single motherhood is accepted, single. So is this a change that is taking place? And this change is actually going to move even whatever judgment comes from here. And I'm hopeful that will be a positive, because the intent looking at more substantive idea of dignity and honor. And it's long then we must kind of accept this point as an issue here. Now the question is, how will it make an impact? If I position it from a perspective, then let's take it this way, that the state or whatever judgment comes out becomes an agency to kind of establish the legality of what has been now tried. So it opens up a space for discussion. It opens up a minuscule space for acceptance in the majority of the 99%, but it opens up a space for this positioning. But will it really make the change only by the judgment? I'll say no, because that's why I say that the interagencies, the people who are doing tremendously good effort, who will open up discussions at the local level, at every level they speak, advocate the idea. So from my position, that is the time when you'll begin to when people will over a period of time begin to question what culture really is. Is culture being subjugated to your norms and traditions? Or maybe it is more independent to a choice one wants to make in life. And this will not become just by this kind of judgment, but the evolution of, but it's the landscape of this judgment will flow into society itself. And maybe I'll put it this way, this will give impetus for many to talk about it. Something which has remained the underbelly to social conversations about whether it is good or not, and stringently governed by norms and morality in society, it will open up the discussion. So what I feel the ray of hope will come is that it will first time give a position, a moral authority for people who are in such unions to approach the court or even the police or the lawmaking process. And thus state, thus as an agency will at least recognize it. And short of recognizing it, whatever judgment comes out, even if you say same-sex marriage or civil union, but they will open the space for us or many people to go and argue their rights and entitlements to that. How does it stop? Not here, but it goes beyond. It begins when you open the space of talking, then the interagencies like advocacy groups, people who really want to come out, and the space of engagement will begin. Let's take a very simple thing. You may have a same-sex, civil union, even if civil union comes out, at least there'll be somebody who will say, okay, I come in the open and disclose the civil union, right? If you accept, we are very happy about the marriage part, and we'll legalize the concept of the fact that yes, you are, and then you will stand the social pressures. So I feel that this judgment will create a space for an agency as a state, give the enough kind of power to wield upon even the lawmakers to say, well, this is right for what you're doing. And will set the tone for a culture of acceptance and correctness and reinterpretation. That's what makes me more hope for this judgment per se. And as I said, as the groups and the movement becomes more, the acceptability will increase. But we must not forget, these are traditions and culture and religion entrenched ideas. It will have very, very strong contestation, and there will be stronger silencing behavior that the society will not really accept. So that, I think, that challenge we should be ready to face. But I think whatever comes out, actually, personally, whatever I'm following it, I'm very hopeful for what it would be. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. And thank you so much, Sonal ma'am, for answering all the questions in the chat box. There was one question that we got during our registration that by Shreya, what are the future challenges of same-sex marriages if it is legalized? And will it pose the same challenges as intersex marriage or intercaste marriage or interreligion marriage? So would anyone like to take a
go for that? Yeah. So, essentially, if you look at some of the laws that are around heterosexual marriages as well, it's not just the marriage acts. There are also acts around domestic violence. It's around how do you pass on property. And, in certain religions, there is a difference in how property is passed down to, say, women, how much is passed down to a girl child, how much to the, male child. I think moving forward, like one of the problems that, has been suggested and continuously keeps up in terms of like this technical argument that what happens then in domestic violence, because, women are sort of afforded a kind of protection through the Domestic Violence Act to, talk about if there is like, they are facing violence. So I think those are quite important questions to, in fact, understand and see how that sort of, plays out. Because now in this case, the relationship is not between a man and woman, right? So it is not the same gender power play, I would say, or it is not the same social setup that is in support of one particular gender.
Right.
However, that doesn't go to say that just because this looks like a gender equal setup on the face of it, that other things will not play out. You know, each of these two people will come with their own intersectional privileges. So, you know, one could be richer, one could be more, well-read, one could belong to a upper caste, right? So you really don't know how it could play out. And also, like homosexuals, they are not living in another society. We are not on an alien planet. So whatever are the evils affecting our society will also affect our relationships, you know. So the social structure or social fabric we are in is going to affect our relationships also. But then how does this look like? We don't know, right? So over time, we will get to know. Secondly, okay, while they may pave the way for, they have said very clearly, like the CJI, that they are not touching religious acts, okay, of marriage. They are only going to touch this SMA, right? So now the Special Marriage Act. Now, supposing moving ahead that, you know, somebody does want to have a religious marriage, then what? You know, somebody says ki nahi, and their family is like, you know, they get a Hindu priest and everybody's okay. Then it is just the marriage registrar who's saying no. Then what happens? Which is the case actually. A lot of people have actually found Hindu priests who have solemnized the wedding, or, you know, so then what happens there? If somebody wants like equal marriage, you know, so things like that. Also children and how this property things will move out. There are almost something like 151 different codes which will get affected, right? And this is what the cabinet expert needs to sit and discuss and figure it out. But I feel that this keeps coming up, right? That, you know, oh, so much has to be changed and blah, blah, you know, why we should not touch it. But it seems to me like that is an argument to say, oh, there's going to be so much work, therefore let's not get into it, you know. So you have to do the work. You have to sort of figure it out, and over time things will change, right? You will understand how it sort of plays out, and it's important to keep the, you know, community voices in the center. You know, I have seen a lot of your questions sort of in the chat box. I've tried to answer as many as possible. But what I'm going to do is that I'm going to leave a link to a resource center for questions, different questions around, say, coming out, for parents, for religion, for education, for all of that. And you could probably look at the resource center to answer more questions. So thanks.
Any other panelists who would want to share their thoughts on the previous question before we go on to the final one?
I think it was about how the inter-se kind of acceptance to caste marriage, intercaste marriage to same sex.
Yeah, so the question was, would it pose a similar challenge like it did for intercaste marriage or interreligion marriages?
It's actually very difficult to answer, but maybe I'll position it this way, that you have the statutory frame to go for intercaste marriage, right?
Right.
So, which means that if something goes wrong between A and B get married in an intercaste union, and they can approach the police for protection A, B, and C. Yeah, the police does have its own. I've been in the military and I know that they have their own kind of biases to work and prejudices to work, but you still have a kind of a statutory kind of push to do it. In the case of same-sex union, it would not be there, or by the time it comes, whatever in whatever form it comes, and that is why it becomes more vulnerable. But both issues origin from one issue only: family honor, and what the society looks at. So it's rather very difficult to say which will kind of underplay and which will overplay in the society. But in my view, that at least some ray of says that intercaste marriage, you still have a position of kind of statutory equality to get married to whom you want.
Right.
But here, I think it will be really contested against honor of the family and kind of their, kind of thinking. So I really can't really answer, but I think they'll have more resistance. Or maybe I just don't know what it would, but I just thought I'll put my point where it is.
Right, sure. Because again, I like how the discussion is moving into the way we have thought of questions or the questions we've received so far. The final one that we actually have for the panelists has to do picking off where Dr. Mukul left us right now. There are states like Rajasthan, Andhra Pradesh, and Assam, which have opposed same-sex marriages. But there are also states like Sikkim, Maharashtra, UP, and Manipur, which have sought for more time in terms of submitting their responses. Now, considering the imbalance of the social fabric, so to say, how would these responses and their arguments sort of be viewed or used when it comes to the Supreme Court hearings or the Supreme Court judgment? Anyone in the panel is free to share their thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think, like, of course, you know, the opinion of the states are being sought and it makes a huge difference. I'll tell you why. Because like when it came to civil union, right, in a lot of countries, why they chose civil union was that the entire country was not in agreement, but certain states were. Okay. So in those states, you were allowed same-sex marriage. Okay. And in the others, you were not recognized. Obviously, this is a fruitless exercise because if you allow same-sex marriage in a particular state and we move from one state to the other, it can't work out. And it didn't work out in other countries because the legal structure was also different. And eventually they had to give marriage equality, right? But I also think, like, on the other side of it, like, we may think it's negative, or, you know, if the government may not take action because people are not ready. But on the other side of the argument is also this understanding that if so many states are not in agreement, the government is like this, clearly then justice is not going to be served speedily, right? And unlike the parliament, okay, who has a lot of time, they can take the time to, you know, get everybody at, you know, on equal footing and follow the longer process. The courts don't have that kind of liberty. They have to serve justice immediately. They can't be like, okay, we'll discuss this 25 years later, you know. So what is actually will sort of getting projected is actually the state is not ready. So we are not going to get any kind of rights. So it's interesting that he's reserving his judgment, and we'll get to know over time what comes up. In fact, people have a problem right now with Chief Justice of India also. And they have put a case against him also that he should not sit on this particular panel. But I'm glad because he seems very well learned about the law. He really understands the intricacies of gender, sex, sexuality. He understood gender identity, but, you know, he's being heavily trolled because he's, you know, more informed than most people. So let's see where this goes.
And actually, marriage is in the concurrent list, so the states will be asked for it. But, you know, yeah, if I can draw a parallel, whether it's just indicative of how things go, the parallel is that when you had the 1999, when George Bush goes out and does this, it is 13 states in the United States who actually make it illegal, same-sex marriage. And then what happens when the state administration and New Jersey, after the 2004 judgment, start issuing out license against what is being said and taking the court ruling as the part of it, is that the domino effect starts, right? So it's 13 who accept initially after the judgment, and then it opens up. So I know this thing, but I mean, maybe I'm being pretty optimistic about it, or the way I'm trying to say or curate the kind of solution to this idea is that the moment one state agrees and two states agrees, you may begin to see a domino. So it's a kind of a good thing to include the state party, not just from the legal standpoint of marriage being in the concurrent list, but also a kind of, again, little cynically to say that, yes, they will be kind of, they can be a domino effect. And then we saw in 2018 also that there was a huge domino effect. That's why I'm a little hopeful of kind of engaging every stakeholder at this point of time, right?
Yeah, Anjali, go ahead.
Yeah. So for the last question from me and Aishwarya, to all the panelists, I would like everyone to give at least a 30-second view on this. What are the spillover effects that you all see in terms of the legalization of same-sex marriages on other aspects like education, employment, health, social security, and the like? So anyone who would like to begin?
I think that, you know, I have the more important demographic that will get affected, and I think those are families and parents. Workplace spillover, all these other places spillover has happened. What has not happened is families, and the primary concern of a parent is like, what is the future of my child going to look like? Is society going to accept them? Will they ever get married? What is going to happen, right? And I think that is something that you will address and you will allow for an open conversation, or if a child feel confident to come and talk about it. And the more parents that they can support their children and show future, it reassures other parents. Other things are happening and they will happen. This spillover effect, of course, will happen. Like, if I am working, instead of going abroad, I'll prefer to stay in India because, the insurance for my partner is taken care of, and, my rent and things, everything, I can stay here without any problems. So it will affect the GDP of India very positively, actually. Right now, we are losing in billions because, where people just go away to other countries, right? So definitely corporate spaces, once they start getting inclusive, the more inclusive you get for queer people, generally you will get more diverse and inclusive. Companies who have been more diverse and inclusive, they have shown around the world, research shows that more than 30% in profits just for becoming more, inclusive. So obviously, economically, we are sort of going to get affected. Schools, there will be lesser bullying of children. If there's more representation of just people instead of just the negative stereotypes, it will be actually quite positive. And I don't think that whole society is going to get destroyed. In fact, the opposite will happen. Instead of us marrying with straight people and both lives being miserable, now we will marry into each other and everybody can be happy,
I think the most important is apart from the rights which we will be getting after the marriage legalization. As Sonal was mentioning about the parents aspect, even that I have the same problem, same point to raise, because my family, when I talk about me openly leaving and all, the first question my mom has that, what next? So how are you going to, after certain age, you will be aging. At that point of time, what are you planning to do? What are your plans and how are you planning? So I didn't have a proper answer till now. What shall I even give her the answer that I do not have anything? So I keep saying, dekh lenge, we'll see about it. I'm not sure and all. But then they are very concerned because my mom have a very, apart from accepting me, see things like, after we are not there in this world, who will take care of him? So this is the biggest concern of my mother. And also, I believe, apart from the civil rights which we will get after this marriage equality, the one thing is which I understand is also the protection. Protection is also something which we can get from this, right? Because recently we had a case wherein a lesbian couple came to us. One of the person from the couple was dragged into a hospital for a conversion therapy. And the other one came us to report saying that this is happening and she has been given some medicine and dragged to a hospital. Now, when we tried to reach out to the lawyer says that it's a Saturday, the court will again open on Monday. So it will take time for us, but the therapy session has already started. We went to the management of hospital. They said, get us, get a permission from a court. Then only we will think of, we are not allowing you to even go to the victim at that point of time. So we rushed to the nearby police station, and the police station first question was from the police SHO, which asked to that girl was, who are you? She said, I'm a partner, I'm her girlfriend, I'm staying with her for 8 years. Then she said, pagal ho gaye ho kya? Are you just gone mad? This is something not happening. Any parents will not think bad of their children. What they are doing is something they are thinking better of their children. And partner kuch bhi nahi hota hai. Irrespective, the judgment came in 2018. Still, a position like SHO doesn't even know there is something called LGBT community altogether. So I think this judgment will also give up a one step ahead maybe, and a protection that at least we can declare that they are my partner, and we have a right to file a case. So since there were no recognition of marriage, there was no recognition of partner, the person was not able to file a case. And that's the reason the person has to go through a lot of problem unless we had a proper pressure from uppers where and the entire conversion therapy was stopped. So I think these rights will also come up with the entire judgment. And I think that is very important for the community, the protection and the rights coming in together. Yeah.
Malanti, you're on mute.
Many parents like me, we are aging. We hope this judgment will come soon and we can adopt child, because after, as Sandeepan mother said, even I was thinking about that. When my child came out, I never thought of, first he thought of he was a gay, then she identified herself as a trans woman. That time I was thinking, after my time, who is going to look after my child? So that is there for every parent. It's not only children concern, it is concern of even parents, right? So even I'm waiting very eagerly. If the judgments come, I can adopt one child on her name, whether she is here or abroad. I can give her back, she will take care of my child. My child will take care of the girl or boy. So that is there. Many children, many parents are waiting for the judgment. Hope this will happen soon when we are alive.
I may add a part of it is that this is where Malama, you said is how you looking at it, and that's what it gets is. This is a chain that will require an intergenerational shift of time. It will be a long process. I mean, imagine a country like us where child marriage is still prevalent despite the legislative issue coming up, legislation on it much before. So the spillover will take generation, but that's the way from conflict to confusion and confusion to acceptance will start. I think this will be the phase in which we will. I may sound kind of this thing, but I think this is the way I kind of look at it, where you try to position it. There will be change of context, there will be a confusion whether should we accept it or not, theek hai ya nahi hai. Logo that I just be a little dramatic to say logo ka kaam hai kehna hai. That's the first time that we'll start saying, well, now we are willing for a change. So it is going to be contest, confusion, and then acceptance, and it will be intergenerational. I mean, so that is going to spill over. Because the problem will not be here. The problem is we will not be able to educate our children. Never will the education curriculum have such kind of issues being highlighted. Well, this is also a part of it. So when the education doesn't come, how does the next generation kind of look into this, right? It's only when, even today, we do not talk about the LGBTQ as really kind of academic issues and understanding for young children to understand what they are. So that is where the spillover will, but the spillover, I hope it goes to the positive when you say, okay, let's kind of educate our own generation, the next to come. Because then you ultimately come on the law, doesn't make much of change as much as the society would do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think, sir, like you ended, we need an intergenerational sort of shift and work when it comes to understanding the lives of every individual, and at least in the LGBTQIA plus community. And that's where we came from, Anjali and I, because we've tried our level best to learn as much as we can, because acceptance needs to happen. Like you said, it's contest to confusion to acceptance. I think we've seen those stages, because I mean, first thing to acknowledge is the fact that we've grown up listening to a lot of what we know now wasn't right. So there is a process of unlearning and relearning that needs to happen, like you mentioned. And specifically to today's conversation, we were surprised because 50% of the people who wanted to be a part of this were students. And this just seemed like the best thing to begin, even if we have a less number of people. I've been seeing the kind of questions that Sonal ma'am so patiently, Sandeepan have been responding to. We still need to learn so much. There's a lot that we don't understand and we need to. There's a lot of misconception that we still operate with. And I think it for us as the next generation begins with acknowledging just that first. And to be able to understand different perspectives, be it with people who are working with parents, a parent herself, someone who is working with the community, is a part of the community, someone who understands the legal aspect and implications of it was felt like the best first step for us. So thank you so much for giving us your time, patiently working through this with us. This was our first attempt at starting a conversation around same-sex marriage, or just understanding the LGBTQIA plus community in itself, and the challenges that they face, and how we can become better allies and support them in the true sense, and not just in a manner of lip service or just conducting conversations. We need to make something tangible happen. So thank you so much. Yes, sir, please.
On behalf of the panel, can I take the permission of thanking both of them for making such a wonderful effort and reaching out to each one of us and really making an effort. And to the panel, I must say that they have been my students, and I really feel very proud of that. The kind of work they have done over the last 2 years and the commitment they have showed. I just wanted to share because it's kind of I couldn't stop sharing with it. I'm so proud of both of you, and on behalf of the panel, if all do permit me, it is really, really commendable for the way you have structured everything out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. And thank you so much to all the panelists for joining us and taking out times from your very busy schedules. I know Sonal ma'am has something planned at 8 o'clock, and all the best to her and to all the other panelists over here in their journeys and then in their struggle to help the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aishwarya. Thank you, Anjali. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye,
Thank
Sandeep.
you.
Bye.